Please take a look at this photo and tell me what you notice, and we'll talk about the photo then in a few minutes. This is part 1 of 2 videos about what happened in Southport, including looking at press coverage and what I think might be the possible motivations for this unspeakable crime, one of which I believe could be racial hatred possibly. I'm breaking it up into 2 parts and I'll post the other one tomorrow. It's taken me a while to record this, to be honest, because it's hard not to cry. You'd want to have a heart of stone not to be affected by what happened to all of these little children. So I'll start with the Irish press, because that's a British newspaper I was looking at there. And I went through all the papers yesterday. What happened in Liverpool was not on the cover of any of the papers except the Irish Examiner. Now, this is a massive, massive broadsheet, and they just wrote 53 words at the very bottom page on the front. So about the length of text message. And all they did in those 53 words was downplay and gaslight. Okay, so they have a little bit more coverage on page 7, indicating they don't think it's very important. And coverage of what happened overall in the Irish papers was minimal. The story appeared around, mostly around page 10 or 11 in all of the papers, except in the Star, which printed just over 100 words on what happened on page 2. So again, this was used to downplay and gaslight, and rather insensitively, they chose to place the story next to this picture, which is larger also than the coverage of the attack. This is titillation. This is a story about this cold-blooded slaughter of children. Okay, so that's how much the Star cares about that. That's all the coverage in the entire paper from yesterday. They also thought that Eamon Dunphy wanting Robert De Niro to play him in a movie was more important than this story. So today I bought a British newspaper to see what the coverage is like in Britain. So look at these little girls. My daughter is very like the little girl there on the left. They're the same age, and my daughter was also starting a summer camp on Monday as well. I thank my lucky stars that this is not my child, but I, like a lot of parents, feel fear now when I do normal things, like drop my child off at summer camp. And that was before this happened, and it was before it even happened here in Ireland in November. So this paper covered the attack with 5 pages in total, but I take issue with how they covered it. So first, they use words like killed, okay? A lot of coverage in the media uses that word. When you're killed, it can be accidental. We use this word when people die in a car crash, for example. These children were premeditatedly murdered. He chose them and the place that they were in advance. It wasn't random. These children were slaughtered, murdered, whatever word you want to use there. Animals who are slaughtered in factories get more dignity in dying and feel less fear than these pursued children did in their final moments. Imagine what they felt in those last moments looking for their mammies and daddies to save them, and how their parents have to live with that. It's just unimaginable. So that was their last moments. This man, and he is a man, stabbing them again and again and again and again. Literal bogeyman. Okay. So again, there's a lot of downplaying just with the language that's being used. The scene was unimaginable. The witnesses describe blood-curdling screams and say the scene was like a horror movie. So we don't need to be downplaying by using words like killed as though it was an accident. We know so far that these 3 little girls are dead. Elsie 7, BB 6 and Alice 9. But more could follow, and children could also be left with brain damage or be left brain dead, conceivably, as loss of blood can cause brain tissue death. Now, 8 times in this coverage, so there's 2 pages here and another 2 pages here, and 8 times they refer to this person who did this as a boy or a teen or a 17-year-old. This is so we have less anger, in my opinion. It's to elicit sympathy. They're implying that he was a child. Now, he was above the age of criminal responsibility, number 1. Secondly, a video was released of him showing that he was a tall, strapping black man, strong in his physicality. These were tiny girls who didn't stand a chance. He was a man, okay? He wasn't a boy. And there's also a condemnation of the riots last night. They don't mention that the riots happened as a result of a Muslim man turning up to the vigil with a knife. Those pictures of him being arrested are online. There wasn't similar media condemnation of Roma and Muslim riots that happened there recently in the UK. They also keep saying in the papers that it's not terror related. I can't find that bit there now, but that's what they say. The very definition of terror is extreme fear. Can we say that this man wanted to cause all these children extreme fear? Yes, we can definitely say that. This was one of his motivations. Now, back to this picture. Did you notice anything? It's all white people. Same with the riots. Where's the black community and the Islamic community? The police keep saying there's no apparent motive, but in the absence of honesty, we speculate. And what cannot be ruled out at this point is a racially motivated attack. Time will tell if any black children were targeted or were present, but this is a predominantly white community. There's 94,000 people in Southport. 89,000 of those who live there are white. There's only around 500 Africans, less than 200 Arabs, and less than 2,000 Asians. There's a lot of white hate being pushed by the establishment media and far leftists, etc. And that's like over the past few years, we've all seen that. And you can guarantee that if these 3 children who have died so far were black, the media and the authorities would be saying this is race motivated. But if this was a race motivated attack on white children, we won't be told. They also keep saying he was born in Cardiff. They say his parents came from Rwanda. What they say and what's true or known is not necessarily the case. When Ukrainians started coming here, we could all see that a vast number of those arriving were not Ukrainians. No one checks the background of refugees. Were they Rwandan at all? I'm sure we won't be told that either, even if it is found out. And if they were, had they integrated well? Neighbours say they kept to themselves. We all know that many of the people who are coming in have no desire to mix with Westerners. How well their parents integrated would have definitely affected how well their son embraced Western values and culture. Ancestry, culture and heritage matters. Let's stop pretending that it doesn't. Just because he was supposedly born in Cardiff, it doesn't mean he adopted or loved Western values or people or British values and people. Just look at Jihadi John as an example of what I mean. If his family came from Rwanda, by the way, that doesn't mean they were necessarily victims of the Rwandan genocide. What's to say they weren't Hutus as opposed to Tutsis who were genocided by Hutus? His parents could have been perpetrators of violence for all we know. How would the authorities have been able to tell? You're not going to tell people at the border when you're claiming asylum or you're a refugee that you did something really bad in the country that you're coming from. If they came from Rwanda, there's a chance they were Christian and not Muslim, as there's more Christians than Muslims in Rwanda. It's unlikely, given that most religiously motivated attacks are Islamic, that he would have been motivated to do this because he has a Christian faith, if he indeed had one. We can't rule out that he could have been inspired by Islamic extremism. Also, in reference to Rwanda and race, there's a lot of talk in the past few years about how the British colonised and enslaved Africans and all of that. There's a lot of talk about not Irish people, but just white people in general, having white privilege and being inherently bad and oppressing black people. So, as I said, this could be race motivated, and the establishment, the media and the woke crowd really have a lot to answer for. And this is a picture of little girls laying flowers. And this obviously is very traumatizing for the community, and in particular for these little children and parents who live there. Just to say, like, Britain didn't colonise Rwanda, Belgium did. The British have actually done a lot to help Rwanda. Maybe this man harboured a resentment towards British people for colonisation regardless. Maybe he was angry about Rwanda being colonised by Belgians, or thought that the British had done that or hold them responsible. What we can say about this crime for sure is that he was motivated by deep anger and hate towards these children. Research indicates that killers who stab often exhibit traits of over-controlled hostility, meaning they harbour anger and resentment that accumulates over time. When criminal profilers look at cases where someone was stabbed multiple times on their body, like these little ones were, they know that they're dealing with somebody who had an intense anger and hatred towards the victim or victims. This kind of rage and violence always has a motive. These girls and adults were stabbed multiple times. The rage was intense, and he wanted to cause not only maximum pain to the children themselves and fear to these children, but also to their parents, families, friends, community and society at large. And of course we have 3 adult victims as well, all heroes. The 2 women who were running the class saved a lot of children by helping them escape down fire escapes, and also one of them locked herself in the bathroom with several of the children after she herself was seriously injured. One man said his daughter was stabbed 8 times in total and spent 14 hours in surgery. So, you know, that's extreme hate there. So when they say there's no motive, that's poppycock. They're just not going to tell us the motive. But the motive was there in one form or another, and it was hate. Last thing I will say about this man is that the Telegraph did report he moved to the UK when he was 6. That was prior to the police then saying he was born in Cardiff, as though this somehow makes him as British as can possibly be. No, he wasn't. Sorry. He just wasn't. Now, just to say, if he was an asylum seeker, which police say they've ruled out, it's important to know that many male so-called asylum seekers in the UK have lied about their age and have put themselves in, they've been put into classrooms as students with children as young as 13 and 14. They know they can't be rejected for asylum applications if they claim to be a minor. I did a video on this before describing cases in the UK where men in their 30s with full-on beards were put into schools. I also list some cases where men put into those schools went on to kill and carry out bombings in the UK. One had even murdered people with a Kalashnikov before he even arrived to claim asylum, and he'd lived in other European countries before he even did so, which means that he had no right to be claiming asylum whatsoever in the UK. Men claiming to be under 18 and being put into schools is also happening in Ireland. That's also in the video I did, which I'll link in the description box. We got a tip off from an Irish teacher last year, and that's how that video came about. Lastly, I was having a conversation this morning where someone referenced there being all sorts of head cases in society and anyone could have done this. Yes, but tell me when any Irish man has specifically targeted children unknown to him as part of a mass stabbing. Similarly, in the UK, this doesn't happen. I can only think of one incident in living memory where a UK native specifically targeted a number of children, and that was 28 years ago in Downplaying, Scotland, which was an awful, awful crime. but I don't remember any crime since then that has specifically targeted children unknown to the perpetrator. These attacks are happening more and more in EU countries, and the attackers don't seem to have the same ties as natives or ancestral natives. So thanks very much for listening to this analysis and commentary, and I will post part 2 on Southport tomorrow.